Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, June 12th, 2023. Time for another show, but more importantly, time to announce the existence, I guess, not to mention the fact that it actually is today, National Falafel Day. I had no idea until yesterday when I saw somebody promoting some free falafel with a free slide of falafel with your stuff. I thought I missed it, but it's today. I thought it was yesterday. Good. I'm glad we all get a chance to get some free falafel. For Greg Dworkin, it's just regular Feel Awful Day, unfortunately. So we expect him back on Wednesday, but just caught a little bug is all. And not quite up to making us suffer through the sneezy, runny nose sort of situation. So I will do it instead. I don't know. I'll go out and catch something so that you get the idea of what's going on. All right, lots to catch up on today. Falafel, not the Bill O'Reilly kind of falafel, which, what was he? Why did he talk about falafel again? Didn't he mistake he was searching for the word for loofah, I think, right? And he ended up with falafel, which, not the same thing, but you never know. People are weird. They may want themselves scrubbed with all kinds of things. I think that was the context. And he was sexually harassing somebody, right? So, what was her name? Andrea Macris? I think that's right. Okay, well, poor woman had to suffer through not only being sexually harassed, but just to make it worse, being near Bill O'Reilly, which is really an awful experience all by itself. Anyway, so much to catch up on as well, from around the world as well as around the country. And I don't know, I feel like should we put a pause on things until Greg gets back to discuss some of these things? Well, there's lots to deal with. We need to get some new, get some more background in on some of the things that are happening. We've certainly spoken quite a bit about the developments with the former guy, so that's good. And he's arraigned tomorrow in Miami, and I guess Miami law enforcement is on alert, wondering about whether or not there will be protest and how vigorous or violent might such a protest get. Last time around, of course, at the arraignment, not on criminal charges. I don't know if that's really going to make any difference, but in his arraignment, or his indictment, rather, for the civil charges up in New York, there was similarly a call for, people will turn out and protest, and they really didn't. And it's hard to gather a crowd in support of Donald Trump of any significant size in New York. It might be easier to do in Florida, but as Matthew Rigdon pointed out in his comments to us last week, it's true that while they'll be organizing in Florida, where it should theoretically be easier to draw a crowd, not least of the reasons being there's just more people in Florida who seem to be hanging around with not much to do in the middle of the day other than express their support for Donald Trump. I don't know why that's the case, but it seems to be true. It's probably not true. I think it's fun to say that it seems to be true is really what I'm getting at here. And they might be able to raise more of a crowd there. But on the other hand, as Matt pointed out, the leaders of the organizations that might otherwise be expected to drive the organization, the leaders of the organizations who might drive the organization of the protest and violence in particular, are already in prison, and maybe that was a conscious choice to try to put some of those people away before coming around to indicting Donald Trump. Don't know, but it seems to have worked out that way, and it's a good thing. Whereas it seems to have worked out in a sort of a bad way, that apparently the case is somehow out of everybody in Florida that you could assign it to in the federal judiciary, has landed in front of Aileen Cannon, right? Was that her first name? And she, of course, was the one who essentially, I think we can say it now, she's been reversed, and pretty pointedly so, who screwed up and was completely wrong on the special master question in one of the earlier civil cases against Trump down there in Florida. It was the civil. Well, no, it wasn't. What am I talking about? It wasn't the civil case. It was the beginning of what would become this criminal case, the documents case at Mar-a-Lago. And I guess I'm brain glitched there because I was realizing I'm getting around to the special master situation, and you don't see a whole lot of special masters in criminal cases all the time, unless of course you're seizing materials from a lawyer's office. Then it becomes a little bit more frequently used, but just generally speaking, I don't know. Anyway, so you remember Judge Cannon screwed that thing up horribly, granted Trump's request for a special master, even though there was nothing whatsoever that would have warranted doing that. And in doing so, had to mangle the law so badly that she was, as I said, reversed, but really rebuked in spectacular fashion by the 11th Circuit. So I guess it's possible. Two things could be possible, many possibilities here, but two that stand out as the extremes, I guess, is one, it could mean that she could once again lean into her pro-Trump bias and purposefully make mistakes that benefit him for as much as possible anyway. She could end up getting reversed again, but she doesn't care, perhaps. That's one possibility. And she could just let him buy time by ruling in his favor on stupid questions that don't make any sense, and it takes a long time to get these things reversed on appeal, and in the meantime he, walks around menacing people. Or there is also the possibility that somewhere deep down inside of Judge Cannon is someone who wants to be regarded as a competent jurist, and she may feel admonished, rebuked, upbraided. How many other words can we have for it? By the 11th Circuit, and chided. There's another one. That she may want to keep things more in line and not find herself admonished by the 11th Circuit again and singled out once again as maybe one of the worst, least qualified, or at least least competent people on the federal bench in Florida, if not the country. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see which one she decides she wants to do. I note for the record, because otherwise it won't be on the record here, but Justice behind the scenes giving me the thumbs up, telling me everything is up and running and working, and hinting at some of the stories that interest him for the day. And one of them is that one, I guess, is he comments that a big part of the job of an organized crime fixer is buying off the right judges. I guess that's true. I don't know what I don't know what the relationship is with Judge Cannon there. She may just be a Trump head, and it doesn't cost anything extra anymore to get her on his side. She might be doing it of her own volition. I don't know. So there's that. And anyway, they did manage to get particularly lucky with that, it seems. I mean, there's no, initially, if Trump were still president, or if one of his allies was president, I guess it would really look super suspicious that he ends up with the case in front of Cannon again. But there's no real reason to believe that the Biden Justice Department would have steered it that way. I don't think. I mean, unless it's some sort of weird reverse psychology. But it is unusual, I guess. I was very surprised by it, and I think people are probably working on some explainers, because my recollection was that they were filing their cases in this lonely little district in Palm Beach County, where she was either the only or one of very few judges working in that division, similar to a Matthew Kaczmarek type situation, and that as long as the feds decided to file their case at the main headquarters of the Southern District of Florida, there was little to no chance they would end up with Cannon presiding over the case. But as it turns out, I guess it's everybody in the district is on the wheel, as they say. I don't know how they actually make the selections, whether they draw something out of a hat or a computer spits it out or they spin a wheel or what. But I didn't think that she'd be on it or, up for consideration if she was one of these little out-of-the-way division judges, and she takes whatever comes to the division but doesn't take from the rest of the district. But I guess she does. So it's a little weird, and we're going to have to see how this plays out. You're really going to have to just wait. There's every possibility that the DOJ asks her to recuse herself or seeks to remove her from the case, given how badly she was beaten up by the 11th Circuit and the special master thing. They have a real shot, I think, I would guess, at throwing her off the case. But then, justice and the judiciary is a little bit weird, and they might want to assume, well, she's been admonished by the 11th Circuit, so we have to give her a chance to show that she has heard and absorbed the lessons from the appeals court before we remove her. And that seems the most likely, really, of the outcomes, if you ask me. But we'll see how it plays out. The other thing Justice threw our way was the collapsed bridge on I-95. So for West Coasters who aren't awake yet and maybe listening to this on podcast, may or may not be familiar if you're entirely West Coast. But I don't see how you miss cultural references to I-95. It's a small road. Nobody uses it. Not very important. It's the major north-south corridor on the East Coast, connecting all the major cities of the East Coast, all the way up and down. So if from Florida, does it go into Maine? I think so. I don't know. But all of the mid-Atlantic cities, say between, New England, Boston, etc., all the way down New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, D.C., on down the line, all the way down the coast. In Philadelphia, they had a little problem, including a truck fire underneath a I-95 overpass somewhere, and the whole section of I-95 has collapsed. So, it depends where you are, but you also have a major interstate that wherever you are, that you probably feel you couldn't do without. And this will make traffic a nightmare in the Philadelphia area and the whole corridor for a long time. But what Justice brought up, good point, right? What ended up happening, big truck fire underneath this overpass, and the fire just weakened the structure of the overpass and it collapsed. And he was saying, remember when 9/11 truthers insisted that there was no way that burning fuel could melt steel and concrete? Yeah, that's true. But that's distant past for now for most of these people. And they've moved on to other things like, saying Russia is a hoax, or chaining themselves to the Twitter office, or, saying that they've been shadow banned by something, or buying Twitter for that matter. So there's no having them stick around to say, oh yeah, you have me there. This is proof. And of course, it's not proof. This was the I-95 was destroyed by the Mossad. Whenever they come up with something to justify their previous theories, the truth will make them change their minds. It never has. But a good observation. And for those of us still clinging to logic, a fun one to watch 9/11 truthers squirm with, except they don't squirm. Okay, let's see. What other things have we got here for your entertainment? As I mentioned to you today, Greg is under the weather today, but that didn't stop him. He's not abandoning you. He didn't stop him from putting together the abbreviated pundit roundup, which, as it happens, could serve as a pretty good substitute, at least for what Greg is thinking, if not for Greg himself. So, what's he got on the headlines today? Abbreviated pundit roundup. The problem is partly Donald Trump but mostly Republican voters. Well, that's certainly the truth. I was wondering if today would be a day, if Greg were calling in, when he would want to explore the political implications of developments overseas, because we don't know anything about them, for one thing. And the weekend was filled with reports from Scotland, where Scottish National Party leader Nicola Sturgeon, does the name even ring a bell? The name's been called a couple of times on the show, has been arrested in a financial scandal, and that, I think, needs some unraveling. I don't know whether I can unravel it. I thought maybe Greg would be interested in doing so, but maybe Wednesday she'll still be arrested. I don't know if she'll be out on bail or whatever they do over there. Who knows? You probably have to hop up and down on one leg and drink warm beer upside down and hit the bullseye 3 times in the darts and pick the winner of the Manchester United game or something to get out of jail, which they spell G-A-O-L, or used to anyway. So, it's wacky over there. Or it used to be. It's very understandable. It's very modern. I don't know. Anyway, also in the news internationally, Silvio Berlusconi has died. A colorful character, you could say. Pretty much the Trump of Italy is what it feels like. And dealing with the coverage of his death is posing a challenge, I guess, to major news organizations. CNN headline, anyway, put it this way: Silvio Berlusconi, Italy's former showman leader, dies at 86. He is flamboyant. That's in the first paragraph here, too. Silvio Berlusconi, the flamboyant billionaire and former Italian prime minister, who once described himself as, how flamboyant was he? The Jesus Christ of politics, which is an amazing thing to say about yourself. Jesus Christ himself, by the way, kind of actually intimately involved in the politics of the day, but the politics was also theocratic, so it's not like he was crossing any lines. And we didn't have the separation of church and state back then. You can't accuse Jesus of having violated the First Amendment. And if you tried that now, it wouldn't work anyway, because there's no such thing anymore. Another court development we need to look at. But okay, yes, flamboyant, sure. Jesus Christ of politics, that might have been overstating things. But CNN does get around to saying the politician, who was long regarded as Italy's most colorful public figure, was elected prime minister 3 times and served for a total of 9 years, longer than anyone since fascist dictator Benito Mussolini, just out of a hat. Thought we might throw that out there. So thanks to Valentina Di Donato, Barbie Latza Nadu, Laura Smith Spark, Peter Wilkinson, oh my gosh, how many people are on this? Antonia Mortensen and Rob Pichetta at CNN for putting this report together. I don't know who decided on which pieces of the puzzle to put in there and how to describe Berlusconi. But I will also note for the record that saw a toot via Mastodon today from Steve M. No more Mr., like no more Mr. Nice Guy, but there's no room for nice guy. There's no room for nice guys, and there's no room for it in his handle either. No more Mr. at Mastodon Social, who says that it would be worth your time to note the different approaches that, say, the New York Times and the BBC took in discussing the death of Mr. Berlusconi. The New York Times summarized his flamboyance, at least in one phrase, as he introduced sex and glamour to Italian TV and then brought the same formula to politics. That is one way of looking at it. Of course, viewed through a more matter-of-fact lens over at the BBC, they had this to say: throughout his political career, Berlusconi faced a string of legal troubles, true, including charges of bribery, tax fraud, and sex with an underage prostitute. Glamour, what have you. Anyway, he was convicted on several occasions, but managed to avoid jail time due to his age and the expiration of the statute of limitations. So he may be more like Trump than we think. And, yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate the BBC's take on this stuff. There may be more in the New York Times reportage on his passing. I don't know. I haven't looked. But that did make for an interesting side-by-side, even if it was cherry-picked. It's just remarkable how that sort of thing happens. Okay, but let me go see, once again, we'll check in with Greg's abbreviated pundit roundup to see what's on his radar, even if he can't tell us verbally. He can pass it on to us in written form. And what have we here? Yes, pluralities of Americans supported the second Trump indictment way back when, just sort of gathering more information on what people have thought of him over the years? Is that what this is? ABC News. He's grabbed this thing. Pluralities of Americans support second Trump indictment, say charges are politically motivated. What is this telling me? There are sharp partisan differences according to the survey. A plurality of Americans think that former President Donald Trump should have been indicted by a federal grand jury on charges related to his handling of classified documents, yet a near equal number say the charges are politically motivated, according to a new ABC News Ipsos poll. Okay. That's why I have misread it. I don't know. I mean, I looked at it 5 times to say, what are they talking about impeachment for? They're not. I just, in looking at it 5 times, made the mistake 5 times of reading this. Pluralities of, maybe I didn't read it even right. I just processed it mentally as impeachment. Pluralities of Americans support second Trump indictment, which is what has actually happened in the news right now. Don't know why I was thinking impeachment. And they say the charges are politically motivated as well. So what are the numbers here? Nearly half, 48% of Americans think Trump should have been charged in this case, whereas 35% think he should not have been, and 17% say they don't know. So, I mean, all right. I mean, they're both pluralities, I guess, but they're widely disparate. 48 and 35 are not very similar numbers. It's 13 points difference, and 48% is in fact nearly half, whereas 35% is that rump group of Trump supporters that no matter what are going to look at him favorably. So it really basically should be written off. And also, 35% isn't the position from which you can threaten to capture a majority, whereas 48% actually is. So anyway, Greg no doubt would have taken us here next, because he does so in the abbreviated pundit roundup. More from that ABC poll and a look at the indies. Not surprisingly, an overwhelming majority, 86% of self-identified Democrats believe the former president should have been charged. There's really no question but that she should have been charged too. This is not up for debate, and this is another media criticism moment. There's no debate about this. The law is perfectly clear. The law is recent, relatively speaking, and it was basically this Presidential Records Act, which is amazing. That I now, as I'm reading it aloud, the Presidential Records Act is actually being offered by Trump's troops as a defense. They don't know how it makes a defense, and they can't state it. I mean, and if they state anything, they state it incorrectly. But they're invoking the Presidential Records Act as a defense, when in fact the Presidential Records Act is the reason you're in trouble, even though that wasn't the statute you were charged under. But their view of things is, well, the Presidential Records Act gives the president the right to designate anything he wants as personal to him and then therefore take it with him. And the proof of that, in their view, is that Bill Clinton, among others, that Bill Clinton took some tapes of his from the White House and designated them as personal, and the National Archives and Records Administration agreed. That's the difference between him and Trump, and said you can take these because they're personal, and that's because the Presidential Records Act actually does apparently have a provision for, well, if you have materials that you maintain for the purposes of, and that generally serve as a substitute or whatever for a journal or diary or something of that sort, then that would be personal and not a presidential record. And these were tapes of an interview that he had given, I guess, at some point, or had been conducted with a journalist or a writer of some kind, and I don't know what, but it wasn't an official act, and the interviewer wasn't a government employee. There was no government function going on here, except that perhaps he was talking about what it's like to be president. But other than that, it was essentially personal reflections, and he kept the tapes, and NARA said, yeah, of course you can keep the tapes, because the Presidential Records Act allows you to designate personal journals and reflections and the like as personal. Whereas Trump says, this means I can take nuclear codes and secret documents, etc., and I'll just designate them personal. No reasonable person would ever come to that conclusion. But Donald Trump does, because he's not a reasonable person. So, to the extent that you'll hear MAGA people running around saying the Presidential Records Act is actually a defense to this, it is not. And you should not be fooled by it. But here we are polling people on, if you murder somebody, should you go to jail for it? Well, who murdered who? Well, Donald Trump murdered, a Democrat. Well, maybe they deserved it, something. This is not up for debate. The law has been broken, and a fairly important law has been broken, and in rather ridiculous and flamboyant fashion. And this is how it goes when you do that. The Department of Justice catches you and prosecutes you. The rule of law is not a point of debate. I don't care that 35% of Americans don't think that they should apply the rule of law to their favorite person. That's not an issue of interest to me, except insofar as I would like to now look for ways to apply the rule of law to these people and arrest them as well. But I know that they are, in fact, expressing their First Amendment rights. So, okay, we leave them alone for now. Be right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We'll continue on with thumbing through the abbreviated pundit roundup. But yes, that's my feeling that the polls on whether or not you ought to apply the rule of law are not of any particular interest to me, except insofar as, there's always the rubbernecking thrill of looking over to the other side and saying, wow, 35% of Americans aren't actually, participating patriotic Americans who love the Constitution after all. Even though they say they do, they really don't. When it applies to them and their favorite guy gets in trouble under the law and the Constitution, no thanks, apparently. Okay, so let's see. We were reading from ABC's poll that 86% of self-identified Democrats believe the president should have been charged. On the other hand, Republicans remain mostly loyal to Trump, with 2 in 3 saying that the former president and current frontrunner for the Republican nomination should not have been charged. Independents are more divided, with 45% believing he should have been charged and a third saying he should not have been, and 22% saying they don't know. Overall, a solid majority of over 3 in 5 Americans finds the charges either very, 42%, or somewhat, 19%, serious, while only 28% of the public say it's not too serious or not serious at all. 1 in 10 say they don't know. And party splits are expectedly polarized, with about 9 in 10 Americans saying the charges are very or somewhat serious, while half of Republicans find them not to be too serious or not serious at all. A majority of independents, 63%, find the charges very or somewhat serious, 38% saying not so much. And, okay, what can I tell you? They're wrong about them not being serious, certainly wrong about them not having to charge the president in this. Let's see, some embedded tweets from Ryan Goodman appear here with, I guess, Jake Tapper asking Trump attorney Parlatore here about, well, trying to defend the indefensible, asking him about the parts of the transcript. Did we discuss what was in the transcript? I guess we haven't, because there are some aspects to this indictment that are rather remarkable, and maybe we want to talk about that one or skip over the polls about these things, and discuss the different angles on this. But one of, I guess the long story short version of this is this, you may have heard people writing about the indictment and referring to it as a speaking indictment, term of art, sort of, easily explained though. Basically, what you need to know about indictment papers, is that they don't have to tell you a whole great deal. They got to tell you what you're indicted for and some basics about who you are and why you're being charged, but they don't have to lay out all the evidence and actually make the case against you. These are not documents that are meant to convince anyone of anything. The convincing that needs to be done at this stage has already been done. They needed to convince a grand jury, and that's an important point to point out too. I'm sure you are aware of this, but when you hear Trump supporters saying the Biden Department of Justice has charged Trump because they're after their political opponents, keep in mind that what's happening here is just like with anything else. A grand jury of normal citizens is impaneled and asked by prosecutors, so what do you make of this evidence? What do you think we ought to do? And the answer is usually, you should indict him. That's what the evidence points to. So it's regular people have indicted. Floridians, in fact, have indicted Donald Trump, not the Biden Justice Department. Though it's certainly true that it's not hard to get an indictment out of a grand jury if you put your mind to it. You remember I'm sure recall the old adage about the prosecutor could get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. And they should, because, ham's not a great sandwich, if you ask me. Sometimes it can be dressed up nicely, but generally speaking, it's suspect right from the beginning. So you can see why. Now, had it been a turkey sandwich, I don't know if it would have gone as well, but you get the idea. But the point here is, one, that Floridians, normal, everyday Floridians who can't come up with excuses to get out of grand jury duty, this is one of the biases of juries in general, sat and listened to the evidence and said, this is really, there's no way around it. We have to indict them. So, like I said, the indictment doesn't have to convince anybody of anything. It doesn't have to. It's just the document that says that we, the grand jury, have heard the evidence and we agree there needs to be charges brought. He's not guilty yet, but it's looking likely that you could make a solid case here. So go ahead. You should do it. In the interest of justice, given what evidence was presented to us, it would be a miscarriage of justice not to conduct an investigation and trial. Yeah, really conduct a trial, but it doesn't mandate a trial necessarily. There could be some agreement reached, a plea bargain. But the grand jury is saying there's too much here to ignore. You have to charge this person, basically. So the indictment really is just a report. We agree. This is what he should be indicted for. These are the charges. And that's all. Now, the speaking indictment is there's nothing that says that that's the ceiling for what belongs or can be in an indictment. So in some cases where it makes strategic sense, and this is one of them, the prosecutors prepare a longer document, a longer indictment, hand it over to the jury, and the jury will, review it and approve it and say, yes, this is what we want to do. But they will give you a narration of everything. Here's a lot of, if not all of, the evidence that we presented to the grand jury so that you can understand as a member of the public from outside when you read that the former president of the United States has been charged under the Espionage Act. And yes, sticklers for actual facts and reality have been pointing out that, yes, although he is charged under the Espionage Act, it's not necessarily the case that what he's done is definable as espionage. Although if it isn't, then rename the act, quite honestly. I think maybe we ought to have a broader understanding of what espionage is. And by the way, if you're looking to excuse him from espionage on the premise that, well, we don't know that he shared this information with anybody, stop trying to do that because you're going to embarrass yourself. Of course he was trying to share this information for people. One, he's on tape trying to share it with people. Two, the most transactional guy in the world didn't try to transact any business with this highly valuable intelligence. Come on. Of course he did. No, I haven't proven it yet. Maybe the prosecutors have it. Maybe they don't. Maybe he was successful in doing it. Maybe he wasn't, but that doesn't matter under the Espionage Act either. And quite honestly, you don't have to share it with anybody to be guilty under the Espionage Act anyway, because everybody, I think this is a fairly well-written piece of legislation, a fairly solid statute, in that they at least recognized that it's not a no harm, no foul kind of a situation. You can't steal national security documents and then fail to sell them to the Russians and then say, I'm not a spy. I didn't commit espionage because I failed as a business person to pull off this transaction. The point isn't, or you can't even say, I didn't even get a chance. You called me before I got a chance to call the Russian embassy. That's no good either. If you are in possession of these documents and you're not supposed to be, that's the end of the story. It doesn't matter what you tried to do. They're not going to wait around. I think they were sensible in crafting the legislation. Don't wait for him to sell it to the Russians and then arrest him for espionage. Arrest him before he sells it to the Russians. And design the statute such that it doesn't matter whether he ever picks up the phone to try to call them or not. It's just merely being in possession of these documents. And he's on tape saying, I'm in possession of these documents. So there's really not much else that you could do. So that's why the speaking indictment is there. They lay out all these facts and they say, here's some transcripts of discussions. Here's a transcript. I don't know if they even used the transcript of the tape that they have from Bedminster. That it's not clear whether that was a part of the grand jury discussions or it was all done before they even shared the fact that the tape of the Bedminster conversation existed. I'm not sure whether that weighed in for the grand jury, but lots of what are actually transcripts of discussions with various Trump associates and in some cases some of his attorneys in which they said, this is the substance of what we discussed. And the stuff that's in there is crazy. I mean, I could spend the whole show reading you the indictment, but I did say I was going to make it long story short, didn't I? Well, that's out the window already, but 2 hours to fill. Listen, here's what happened. There are, oh, you know what? I have an excellent thread that will summarize it in layman's terms, I think. And it's here somewhere. So rest assured. You'll hear it. It's around here, although now it makes me want to stop on this thing too. But okay, I think this is it. And among others, I saw it through online social media channels, but it was Rebecca Romans who tagged it and said, you got to read this thing, and sent it on via the Bird site. So I didn't pick it up until a little later, but I had actually seen it in my travels. Everybody thought this was a great thing. So good eye, Rebecca. Everybody agrees with you here. This thread, she says, is really worth the read. And it comes from a person I don't know, which is great because now maybe I'll know someone new and fun and interesting. Fuller Initiative, who tweets at the bird site still under the name Metro Adlib, if I've got that right. All one word, of course, and no underscores or anything like that. Anyway, Metro Adlib has this to say, and she says, do I have it right? I'm assuming I'm making some gender assumptions here, but I think we're right. And there's no pronouns here in the profile, so I'm going with it. And she says, I literally, and that's in capital letters, I literally stopped working on my memo so I could read this indictment. And it seems to me, though she's speaking in layman's terms, she must be working on something legal. She may be a lawyer, may not be, but just, clearly reasonably well versed in the law, and it comes through in this. So also there's some references here that I just don't understand because I'm just not, young or colorful enough to understand a lot of these things. But okay, this is it. She's stopped working on the memo. She could read this indictment. She says, I am on page 24. It's not that long. It's like 48 pages, something like that. I am on page 24 and Jesus Lupita Nyong'o Christ. I'm like, what? I don't know. But okay, it sounds pretty good. How this man still has the capacity to shock me after everything that's happened, I'll never know. But I am sitting here stunned, and I'm going to have to, voice the emphasis on things where things are in capital letters and asterisked and who knows what. I'll be honest, she continues, because I really do lean into naivete sometimes. It's difficult for me to assume the worst from people, even when they've done all the worst things. So, this whole time, and sometimes that's WHOLLLLLE, my version of that. I assume she's saying this whole time, I've been thinking, wonder why he didn't give back those documents. He probably lost them. A lot of people have wondered, but come on. And also, she says she leans into the naivete, right? Also, this dingus just grabbed stuff. We'll have to, clean things up a little. I don't really have to, but I'm gonna grab stuff from the White House because he's too stupid to know he couldn't. He probably doesn't even realize what he has. LOL. Nope. She repeats the nope with more O's. This was a deliberate and concerted effort to remove the most sensitive documents the country has and keep them, and then show them to people at his leisure while acknowledging that he was neither supposed to have them or show them, which is what we learned in the Bedminster tape, right? He haphazardly stored the docs any damn where, including in the goddamn bathroom shower. They were chucked to some random room in Mar-a-Lago, and occasionally the boxes, because there were so many, would tumble down. And top secret documents having to do with defense plans, military campaigns, nukes, you name it, documents clearly marked top secret and confidential, and two other designations I'd never even heard of before today, but which apparently means super duper duper double pinky swearsies realsies secret, would just spill out onto the goddamn floor and lie there exposed for all to see, just naked and bearing all to the world like a national security full Monty. I mean, that's true. That's described in the indictment. That, the serious part of all, we'll get to some of the more annoying aspects, and she does in a minute. But yes, the story she's telling is that they were piling up these boxes and moving them everywhere, and they were moving them. You'll find out later in the thread that they're moving them to hide them. It's also made very clear that's the value of this speaking indictment. Is it talks about the progression of the facts here and what they've established, that the surveillance video the security video from Mar-a-Lago shows them moving the boxes. Like the day before the lawyers are supposed to come and go through the boxes to deal with the subpoena, they're like, let's move these things so that our lawyers don't find them. It's awful. It's the worst possible thing. And he's doing it, and she's just finding herself stunned at how brazen it actually is. And she's right. But yes, there was this one moment when they stacked up the boxes so high that they toppled over and all the stuff spilled out. And there's a picture of it. And what's interesting is yesterday, I noted, or I saw that Trump was, I don't know, talking to a rally somewhere. I think he had some appearance on Saturday, and he's musing to the people in his speech that, you know, maybe those documents are spilled. You remember when he was saying that the FBI came and they raided my house and they threw the documents all over the floor? The pictures of the documents that they were circulating in the initial pleadings in all of this, and the affidavit for, or I don't know, it was that this was actually the service of the search warrant, but Trump was saying they're the ones mishandling the documents. Look, they threw them all over the floor, and that was a staged picture with the rulers out there for scale and everything, and redacting the secret stuff. But this was the FBI lining up all the papers on the floor, showing what was the volume and import of these papers that we're seizing. It wasn't an accident, and it wasn't them mistreating the documents. But then he, on Saturday, conflates that with this spill of documents out of these boxes that was done by his own staff. And the picture was taken by his staff. In fact, it was taken, I think, by the staffer who was himself indicted, Walt Nauta. I don't know how he pronounces his last name. The guy who's the valet and body man. So he was a military, a Navy personnel who was detailed, that's the word I'm looking for, to the White House as a valet, and then went with Trump in a personal capacity afterwards. I guess he left the Navy and no longer working with the military, no longer working in detailed to the White House, and went to Mar-a-Lago to personally work for Trump, continuing the same work. And he took the picture of the spill, which, by the way, he took the picture and I guess he, I don't know what, emailed it, texted it, something, electronically transferred it over to, I guess, to Trump or some other people who are in the Trump inner circle, saying, look, we got to do something to clean up these boxes. But in the meantime, you've photographed top secret documents and sent them via the unsecured internet. You have a problem there too, sir. You were in the Navy. What's wrong with you? And the answer is he's got Trump brain and he doesn't know what's going on anymore. So now everything Trump touches dies. He touched the guy's brain. Now it's Trump brain and he's indicted. Honorable service Navy officer. Now he's going to go to jail for espionage, for God's sake, because he's such an idiot. Anyway, but Trump spent Saturday saying maybe that the documents, they're all over the floor. Maybe the FBI did that because they're the ones mistreating the documents. Remember, they spilled them all over the floor when they raided my house. No, the two have nothing to do with one another. They're just two different pictures of different documents on the floor for different reasons. One, intentional and done by the FBI, and two, accidental and done by your people. But, if you're speaking to a bunch of people with Trump brain, what the hell, go for it. So anyway, as I left off before, as Metro Ad Lib was saying, and then, as if that weren't enough, the spilled out documents, the archives, this is more narrative of what's spelled out in the indictment. The narratives ask this MF 11 times, this MFer 11 times, to give all this stuff back. And 45 would be all, I gave you everything I got. Damn, there's nothing here. And then he would have his aides move the boxes. And he would travel with the boxes. And some member of his family, Ivanka or Melania or Lara, also knew he had the boxes. This unexplained, but it comes from a piece of the indictment which quotes some texts from Walt, Nauta, and others back and forth. And at one point, without identifying who he's speaking to, he says something like, "Yes, ma'am, the boxes that, you and your family asked about are here, there, or the other thing." And so is it Ivanka? Is it Lara? Possibly. Is it Melania? We don't know. It's not identified. But some member of his family also knew he had the boxes, but he would travel with the boxes because that was presumably the only way to make sure he kept them, because his lawyers were looking to round that stuff up and they were advising him, give it back. Give it back. You're really in trouble here. Get rid of this stuff. It's the only way to avoid serious problems. So instead, he would order it loaded on the plane with him so that when he went to Bedminster for the summer, no lawyers would come and accidentally do something dumb like comply with the Presidential Records Act. But what's wilder still, this continues, is that this MFer had lawyers who were like, "Fam, for serious, you need to turn in anything that you have that is a file and belongs to the U.S. government, dead ass." Now, that's vernacular that you don't hear from me very often, but trying to remain faithful to what's been written here, even if I'm not reading it in anything close to how it might be said. And 45 was all to the lawyers, to these officers of the court. And this is the really crazy part. Some of these the transcripts of recollections of these lawyers telling the FBI, this is what Trump told me to do with the documents. Couldn't you all just tell them there's nothing here? Wouldn't it be better if we just kind of like burned all this stuff, if it were here, hypothetically? One lawyer, of course, is aghast at all of this. It's illustrated with a photo of someone looking aghast. And then he was like, "You got this subpoena on May 11th. I'm coming through on the 1st of the month to run through the whole thing, and I'm going to make sure nothing that belongs to these United Ass States is in that garish monstrosity you pretend is a house." Right? So one of the lawyers says, look, there's just no way around this. This can't be fooled with. We need to comb through the papers and give back what belongs to the government. So 45 has his body man and his aides move the boxes again. Like just scores of boxes. He has them move a gazillion boxes again to hide them from his lawyers. What is he thinking? And then the night before the day his lawyer is supposed to come through, he called him, the lawyer, and was like, ready for this? Okay, more vernacular. "Hey, dog, you still coming tomorrow? I was sitting here talking to the homies and we don't know why you're coming. Why are you coming?" And the lawyer was like, presumably after a deep sigh, "I already told you I'm coming through to move through the house and make sure I can tell them that we complied with the subpoena. I'm going to make sure you don't have anything you're not supposed to, okay?" And 45 is like, "Oh, right. Cool. Come on through then. I'll see you tomorrow." And then he hung up and he had his body man move more boxes. That is the most astonishing part of all this, right? He's consciously looking to hide the documents from his lawyers so his lawyers don't have the ability to stop hiding them from the FBI and NARA. I have to keep reading, but what I really need to tell you, Metro Adlib says, is that whoever drafted this, the indictment, the speaking indictment, is giving us next level caliber Dorian Corey shade. Don't know what the hell that's supposed to mean. But maybe you do and you enjoyed it as a result. Because sprinkled throughout here are excerpts from quotes that Donald Trump gave the press during campaigns and his presidency, boasting about how good he'd be at keeping this country's secrets safe. And this is all like, well, Hillary Clinton, she gave away the secrets. She used a server, a private server. She should be arrested. Lock her up. 30,000 emails. But you remember all these things. And they do, in fact, sprinkle throughout quotes from Trump saying we're going to bring down the full weight of the law on anybody who mishandles documents. There can't be any of this stuff. There's none of this baloney about technicality. We should be locking up Hillary Clinton. And then, of course, he went and did the same thing. But he's awesome when he does it, and she's terrible when she does it. So therefore, but yes, someone is really seriously pissed. There's literally nothing really added to the indictment by adding these excerpts. Legally speaking, I mean, all the evidence that he's guilty of violating the Espionage Act is there, and they don't need these quotes. This is just extra twist the knife irony. And when they say speaking indictments, who are they speaking to? They're speaking to you and me. When people say, this is so serious, I'm going to read the indictment for myself, that's the person they're speaking to. And of course, to people who are going to be talking with people who are going to be going, on the air or in social situations, social media, what have you, and saying, oh, there's nothing to this. They don't have anything. They got nothing. This is garbage. It's all made up. It's a hoax. Or the Presidential Records Act actually is a defense here or whatever. They are giving everybody the ammunition they need to have everyday water cooler discussions with doubters about this case and shut them down. That's what the speaking indictment means. That's what it's all about. So yes, here is Trump being quoted throughout, boasting about how good he would be at keeping the country's secrets safe, how we needed to return to discretion, and how people who violated national security laws and breached the protections afforded our most sensitive documents needed to be punished with the full might of the law. For real. For real. And then a big gasp. The lawyer went to Mar-a-Lago, and 45 and his aides were just sitting there like, oh yeah, this guy wants to make sure we've turned all this stuff in. Somebody take him back to the room and make sure he's comfortable. The lawyer goes, he looks around, and he finds 38 things that were top secret. And honest to God, I think they left that stuff there deliberately so that it wouldn't look like they'd cleaned house. That's an interesting strategy, right? Like if they are moving all the boxes so that the lawyer doesn't discover them, you might ask yourself, why didn't they move the box or 2 or 10 or whatever that contained these extra 38 classified items? And the answer, maybe, if you really credit them with this kind of planning, is, well, if we move everything, he's probably going to be suspicious that we're hiding stuff from him. But if we accidentally, quote unquote, leave some stuff behind and he can discover it, he feels like job well done. Okay, and I was needed here. Hello, we're back again. Hi, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. We continue reading the Metro ad lib thread here, which is a great, I think, what do we say? Man on the street, person on the street, trying to be non-gender specific. Though really, why should we be specific about where they are? I don't know. Anyway, but don't have to be on the street. They could be in an office or in a Starbucks for that matter. We don't know. But when they talk, it's important. And just sort of someone I think who it appears to me has some legal background and so is doing a great job translating these legal happenings into understandable person on the street language. So where were we? Right. We were at the point where Metro Adlib is speculating that they have left intentionally, the Trump people have left intentionally 38 classified documents in the boxes that they allowed their own lawyer to see so that it didn't look like they had done some emergency panicked house cleaning, or that he didn't come to the conclusion that you must be hiding something. I fully believed when I got here that I was going to find some classified material, and if I found none, I would be suspicious that you were hiding it from me. But I find this, I think 38, that's a number that's kind of believable. You are a very dumb person, and you might not understand what's classified and what's not, But 38 is sufficiently large number that all the people who thought, of course, he was hiding confidential classified documents in his house will be satisfied at finding 38. If it was 1 or 2 or something, they might be disappointed somehow. But it's not 1,000. So is that a valid theory? We don't know. There's no way of telling. But it's an interesting thought. As she says, like I say, I read here before, honest to God, I think they left that stuff there deliberately so that it wouldn't look like they had cleaned house. So the lawyer packages up what's left. You remember that he put it in, they made sure of telling everyone it was in what, like a Redwell folder, is that what they're called? And then duct tape the thing closed. So the lawyer packages up what's left, goes back out, and 45 has, as she says, the goddamn audacity to be like, what's up? How we looking? Hand to God, this man says, is it good? Is it bad? As though he hadn't directed everyone to clean house. He's play acting for the lawyers here to make it look like he has no idea. I didn't even know we had some papers. How's it going? I directed everybody to move the papers around so that you would never even find it. But how'd we do? Wink, wink. Then, when the lawyer shrugs and indicates that there's still some you tell me what's going on here, Chester copper pot level stuff in the box he's carrying, 45 mimes taking out the secret stuff and disposing of it. Mimes with his wee little hands. Yes, there is a transcript here. Again, I guess, of discussion with the lawyer and the FBI telling us, so what did the president, the former president, say to you when you told him that you had these 38 additional documents? And really, here, let me see if I can find, where's the Trump indictment? Is it online? I mean, I know it is, but is it easily found? I wonder whether is there. Here we are. Read the full text of the Trump indictment from the Washington Post, and I can scroll down. I don't have to read you I'm not going to read you all 49 pages here, but there is a section in which there's this discussion, and maybe it's best, just for clarity's sake, to see what it was that Trump told the lawyer. And I think it's Evan Corcoran we're talking about here. And wow. And I also remember that there's lots of pictures of these documents and how they're stored, and it's absurd, including a picture of the boxes of documents stacked up on the stage in the what they call the gold and white ballroom. But that's where whenever Trump crashes a wedding and speaks to people, or they have fundraisers or whatever, and they're in there, that's the room. And apparently there was just top secret documents sitting on the stage. I imagine that people renting the place for a party would have insisted that they close the curtains, so they may not have known that stuff was there. But it may have been. I don't really know. It's not entirely clear whether that stuff was actually in the room when they were renting it out. Okay, so where is this discussion? It's the transcriptions are. Oh yeah, by the way, for the record, the indictment does in fact contain the transcript of the Bedminster conversation. Just to clear that up, I've just scrolled past that. So that I presume means that the grand jury was presented with that probably late in the proceedings, but they got that too. And that can only seal the deal, quite honestly. Okay. There's also a great discussion of the FBI's interview with Nauta, the valet, in which he absolutely hangs himself and tells them, I didn't know about this stuff, and I don't know where the boxes came from. I don't know where they went, But he's caught on video being the one moving these things, and he's swearing to the FBI that he didn't know where they came from or where they went. And, you're doomed. Is this it here? Oh, well, here's one of the discussions that's similar to the one I'm looking for. On May 23rd, 2022, Trump met with Trump Attorney 1 and Trump Attorney 2 at Mar-a-Lago to discuss the response to the May 11th subpoena. Trump Attorney 1 and Trump Attorney 2 told Trump that they needed to search for documents that would be responsive to the subpoena and provide a certification that there had been compliance with the subpoena. Trump, in sum and substance, made the following statements, among others, as memorialized by Trump Attorney 1. First, I don't want anybody looking. I don't want anybody looking through my boxes. I really don't. I don't want you looking through my boxes. He also said at some point, well, what happens if we just don't respond at all, or we don't play ball with them? This is a grand jury subpoena. Give us the documents, right? And no, or NARA's subpoena, I guess. Wouldn't it be better if we just told them we don't have anything here? Well, no. I mean, then you'd be in trouble, right? You're lying. Nah, who's to say? And wouldn't it look better if there are no documents? Wink, wink, like, what if we dispose of them? What if we buried them with Ivana? I don't know. Wouldn't it look better? I mean, that'd be an awfully dumb thing to do, but it might not be the dumbest thing that there is. I don't know. Okay. Now later on, there's more discussion and another transcript, I think. Anyway, the point is, if I don't find this thing quickly, here we are. Here we go. Trump and Trump Attorney 1. What point are we in time here? We're now in the afternoon of June 2nd, 2022. And Trump has been informed. Trump Attorney 1 arrived at the Mar-a-Lago Club to review Trump's boxes to look for documents with the classification markings in response to the May 11th subpoena. Trump met with Trump Attorney 1 before Trump Attorney 1 conducted the review. Nauta escorted Trump Attorney 1 to the storage room, and between 4 o'clock and 6:30, Trump Attorney 1 reviewed the documents in the storage room, located the 38 documents with classification markings, which Trump Attorney 1 removed and placed in a red-welled folder. Trump Attorney 1 contacted Nauta and asked him to bring clear duct tape to the storage room, which Nauta did. Trump Attorney 1 used the clear duct tape, that's packing tape, it's not really duct tape, to seal the red-welled folder with the documents with classification markings inside. After Trump Attorney 1 finished sealing the red-welled folder containing the documents with classification markings that he had found inside Trump's boxes, Nauta took Trump Attorney 1 to the dining room in the Mar-a-Lago Club to meet with Trump. Of course, that's where he meets with you, because everything is transacted over a meal, because everything is a meal. I take bites out of my desk. I eat my ties. I eat my notes. What I don't flush down the toilet, and sometimes I eat that too. After Trump Attorney 1 confirmed that he was finished with his search of the storage room, Trump asked, "Did you find anything? Is it bad? Good?" We heard that from our thread author here. Trump and Trump Attorney 1 then discussed what to do with the red-welled folder containing documents with classification markings, and whether Trump Attorney 1 should bring them to his hotel room and put them in a safe there. Again, this too, not up for debate, just like the rule of law. What should we do with the 38 classified documents you found? The answer is, I came here to take what I could find, and that would be given to NARA/the FBI. At this stage, we're going to have to give it possibly to the FBI. You're in trouble for having these, but I think we can get out of trouble if we hand them over right away. Trump says basically, why don't you take the night, take them to your hotel room, keep them in a safe, it's national security. But during that conversation, Trump made a plucking motion. That's the miming with his wee hands. Plucking motion, as memorialized by Trump Attorney 1. He made a funny motion as though, well, okay, why don't you take them with you to your hotel room, and if there's anything really bad in there, like, pluck it out. And that was the motion he made. He didn't say that. I didn't say plug it. I made the motion. You can't tell. That motion could be anything. But that's the way it was understood by Trump's attorney, and the way he described it to the FBI. That Trump said, well, if there is anything, like I left according to the theory here, right, that's been put forward by our thread author, Metro Adlib, says, I think maybe they seeded the boxes with 38 documents so that it wouldn't look like they cleaned house. But just in case I made a mistake and put something like super damning in there, why don't you take the folder for the night, and if there's anything like really bad, like really classified, that would make me really look bad, just hand motion. Take it out. Take it out. I mean, wow. Wow. That's crazy. Well, the lawyer apparently ignores it. And going back to the thread is like, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer here. And I'm going to tell, what is this? I'm going to being in last lawyer. Oh, that's right. He's got to talk. Now, this is Evan Corcoran, and he's going to talk to, what's her name? Oh, gosh. I can't even remember the other idiot lawyer that he convinces to sign the affidavit saying that they had done a thorough search to the best of her knowledge, right? I'm going to, here we go, bring in another lawyer, and I'm going to tell her, the lawyer says, that I went all the way through everything you had, or everything you said you had. Then I'm going to tell her that what I'm holding right now, this folder, is the last of anything that you have and aren't supposed to. So, if there is anything else in this house, tell me now, 'cause she's coming with an official-ass paper that I am tendering to the feds, and we don't lie to the feds. We do, of course. He does. Now, he says he doesn't, but he's there. So, is this it, Donald? And by the way, he's like, take it to your hotel room and maybe pluck it out. I've taped the folder shut so that doesn't happen. You apparently don't understand the meaning of my having taped this thing shut, because I don't have to do that. You put it in a bag and nothing will fall out, right? But taped it shut. Why don't you just cut off the tape and then pluck out whatever, and put it, if you think the feds will think you put it in another folder and tape that folder, basically is what he's asking him to do. So again, the lawyer says, listen, tomorrow we're going to swear in writing to the feds that there is nothing else here. So is that true or what? You're putting my neck on the chopping block here. And 45 is like, on my mama. He tells him, that's it. That's all there is. So the lawyer brings the other lawyer in and is like, this is it. This is everything. So you can safely put your good name and your good bar ID number on this super official sworn statement, because 45 said this is it and we've complied. So she says, let me just stop for a moment right here and tell you that I would literally die first. I would literally die before I relied on that man's representations. I'd lie down in the center of my living room floor, cover myself up with a blanket, roll from wall to wall back and forth until I was, I don't even know what Dexter secure in the bedding. Okay. And then will my body to cease breathing before I'd put my name on some damn crap, we'll say, off the strength of Donald Gargamel John Trump's word. And it's a good instinct. So the lawyers turned that weak-ass certification in and told the National Archives and Records Administration, the entity charged with the task of maintaining our collective memory as a nation, that's all we got. As if this federal agency, whose chief responsibility is literally to keep things, wouldn't know this veritable mountain of documents was still missing. Yeah. And I guess that's where the case proceeds from there. The feds got that certification back and looked at it like, yeah, okay. And another meme illustrating, no, I don't think so. And then they subpoenaed the video surveillance from Mar-a-Lago because, of course. And what do they see? The body man and the aides, who swore they didn't know anything about it, not only moving boxes, but moving boxes onto a plane as well as around and around and around in the house. And then that plane taking off with Trump in tow, flying away for the summer because he wanted the boxes with him at his vacation house. So the DOJ sent them boys in, and the windbreakers searched that stucco Mediterranean-style abomination from top to bottom and found 100+ more protected documents. Your boy is a clown. There's a breakdown of the stuff that they found in the indictment. Every time I see the words concerning military capabilities of the United States or concerning nuclear weaponry of the United States, I just, wow. And I have to agree. And then a picture of Walt Nauta, for some reason. This is the body man. If the past is indeed prologue, and we draw from my favorite episode of American history ever, brought to us courtesy of Mr. Mitchell, Haldeman, Ehrlichman, Colson, Hunt, and Liddy. If, history, if the past is prologue, this guy in the picture, Walt Nauta, goes directly to jail, and 45, doesn't. I genuinely hope that if over the course of these Twitter years you have taken but one thing from everything I've ever told you, it's not to lie to the feds. Do not lie to the feds. Just decline the interview and get indicted on whatever they've got. You can beg for grace later. There are literally mechanisms in place for people who come clean and are helpful to them down the line. Just decline the interview, but do not lie. And the reason for this is now some screen grabs of Walt Nauta's interview with the FBI, in which he is telling them, gee whiz, I don't know anything about this. I don't know how the boxes got there. I don't know where they came from, et cetera, et cetera. And then concluding with, the question that's put to him is, do you have any information that would help us understand, like, where they were kept, how they were kept, were they secured, were they locked? Something that makes the intelligence community, whatever. It's sort of scribbled over here, but basically something to reassure the national security and intelligence community that the secrets are still safe, despite the fact that you had them illegally. And his answer is, I wish I could tell you. I don't know. I honestly just don't know. Were they kept secured? Were they locked up? You do know. You're the one person who knows intimately. And he says, golly gee, I just can't tell you. So anyway, that's it. In summation, everything is awful. And that's pretty good summation of what's in there. You should read the indictment for yourself if you're considering it, because it's not dense, super legal material. It's very understandable. It is, in fact, written for the public to understand and to get the idea and to be able to be conversant in just how egregious a violation of the Espionage Act this really was. So you should do it. It's great. And it's astonishing. And it's astonishing that there are people who don't see that it's an open and shut case. But, the people who say the Presidential Records Act is a defense are the same people who say, as we tell you all the time, if you believe that someone telling you that you're wrong is a violation of your First Amendment rights because you have free speech, and even if you're wrong, you have the right to say that you're wrong, and you don't understand that you have already said it and exercised the right, the person can't tell you that you're wrong unless they hear what you have to say first. And so it's not a problem. And even if they didn't let you say what you had to say, even if they really did stifle your speech, as long as it's not the government doing it, it's of no concern to the First Amendment. But if you have that sort of child's level understanding of the law, you'll also fall for the Presidential Records Act excuse as well. Okay, so that's it. Yes, and right. The correct answer for how this thread should have been read and interpreted is that I should have said, if I need decoding, I can turn to Darwin. He says, you have, as Pham, his favorite expression when he talks to us, you have a senior black correspondent for Twitter threads just like this. And it's true, but then that means, okay, well, first of all, I burden you with the job of having to read the thing. And second of all, I don't get to read it today. But you know what? If there's anything we misunderstood entirely, or you could do an explainer of all the things where I was like, I don't know what the hell that means. That would be most welcome as well. And if you just wanted to read the whole thing again and read it right, or give us your own thoughts on it, please do. And that goes for all of you as well. So, yes, but I was very excited about that thread because I thought, generally speaking, it was a great layman's explanation of what's in there, and it should demystify it, and it should convince you that you can yourself read this indictment and come to your own conclusions if you want to. But I am pretty sure what your conclusions are going to be. But the point is that it's not legalese. She didn't need to interpret it for you, but as it happens, she did a great job doing it. So there you go. Okay. Other items, some related to this. Oh, yes, right. Where did I have in my KITM hashtag? I had a note from I got to get it sorted the latest. Patrick Snyder, who had sent me, a couple of things. And I'm usually behind on my Patrick Snyder suggestions. This one, though, was a John Cooper tweet, who takes one of the photos released with the indictment and says, oh, look at this. This is a picture of the storage room with the documents in it, piled literally to the ceiling in these boxes. There were also, of course, as was mentioned in the thread, boxes stored in a shower in a bathroom somewhere. Like, I don't know what the hell that was supposed to be. But then on the stage, in the ballroom, they were everywhere. It was crazy. Anyway, it looks like, I can't quite tell. It's plausible that this is a correct call here. John Cooper circling an object in the storage room alongside these, literally right next to these boxes, and says it was so nice of Trump to leave a copying machine in the room where he stored secret documents to make things easier for foreign spies. And golly, if what he has circled doesn't look like it is in fact the rear of a copying machine, but I can't be 100% certain. You can't tell for sure. But of course, there are probably other video resources that would demonstrate that was in fact what it was. That would be an awfully dumb place to store your super secret documents. That is true. All right, let's see. What was the other thing that? What's this other thing from Patrick from over the weekend here? Oh yeah. That's true. That's sort of a callback to something that we discussed last week, though. But just generally, it looks like a fascinating thread. Is it very long? I mean, it's a total departure from what we're dealing with here. But what were we talking about? What was the context of this? I think we were talking about UN stuff and the Russian claims of being, I guess, alone perhaps among the permanent members of the UN Security Council. I'm sure China would have made the same claim, and it would be a better claim at the time when it was Taiwan sitting as the Republic of China. But anyway, but claiming to, the other permanent members besides China and the Soviet Union being United States, Britain, and France. And I don't know how we got around to it, but we ended up talking about the fact that it was like, the colonial powers. I think we were talking about languages, actually. But, oh, yeah, right. And the use of Russian at the UN or something like that. But anyway, that it was the colonial powers whose languages we were using because colonialism and imperialism, and that Russia, constantly insisted that it wasn't an imperial colonial power, but that really wasn't necessarily the case. It wasn't really the way you should look at things. They wanted to insist that was the case, but that was only because they hadn't colonized Africa or South America or the places that were carved up in toto by the European powers elsewhere. But Russian expansionism to the east certainly had to have been viewed as, if not colonialism per se, certainly imperialism by the people who really didn't want to have anything to do with Russians in general or be part of the Soviet Union necessarily, and expansion to the West, by the way, into Ukraine, etc., where people may, at least some people, didn't really want to be a part of the USSR. But pointing this out, Patrick, I guess, maybe hearing that, points to this thread by Azamat. Oh boy, I'm going to have to do my best for this one. Azmat Junisbai, maybe? Junisbai? This is tough for me, but Junisbai, who is, an expert and sociology professor and expert in various other reasons on the Soviet Union, I guess, saying, successfully obscuring the reality of the Soviet Union as a ruthless colonial power has got to be one of the most astonishing propaganda accomplishments in modern history, and simultaneously one of the most consequential and problematic legacies of the USSR. And I am forced to agree, but mostly because I don't have any time to disagree. But no, actually, I do agree with that. Let me throw in a little bit more while we close out. Inside Russia, the view of itself as a selfless and benevolent big brother that gifted modernity and prosperity to non-Russian societies, which comprise the USSR, is ubiquitous. The term colonialism is routinely used to condemn other nations, but the gaze seldom turns inward. Not surprising. And the thread is much longer and more involved than that, of course.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Man, there's a lot that we're not getting to, but there's nothing we can do. There's too much to discuss about the former guy, and we could use the time off the air, actually, to try and digest some of the other things that we're going to need to go over with you. Plus, it would be wise to have some other heads involved in, say, the discussion of what's been going on at the SCOTUS lately. There's a big case that broke over that came down over or heading into the weekend on Voting Rights Act, and a very surprising result there as two of the normally conservative justices, Kavanaugh and the Chief, jumped over to join the liberals in their view of, I guess, the need for at least partial restoration of the parts of the Voting Rights Act that the conservative court destroyed a few years ago. Essentially, I don't know, and it'd be very interesting to read the way that Kavanaugh comes around to it, because he is also essentially reserving the right to do something horrible again later on, I think. But he found that for strategic reasons, it seems that Kavanaugh was willing to come around to a position of wanting to preserve the view that occasionally certain states might need to have their maps reviewed for gerrymandering that dilutes the votes and voting power of minority voters in those states, which is essentially an admission that when they initially said, hey, we don't really need to keep the Voting Rights Act intact in the way that it was originally passed way back when, because we're kind of post-racial now. We elected a black guy president, so that's that. That's the end of racism. And of course, everybody who disagreed said what you're going to end up doing is you're going to be releasing the southern states from their need to have their maps pre-cleared by the Justice Department, which has been the case for, 30, 40 years, because they have this long-standing history of discrimination and attempts at diluting the votes of minority voters there. And they said, no, we're over that now. That's not going to happen anymore. That would be too crazy for that to happen. And they struck it down. They got rid of it. And then immediately, just by sheer coincidence, that exact same list of states that used to be under pre-clearance orders from the DOJ voting rights section all started gerrymandering their maps in ways that would dilute minority voting power. And then I guess they must have noticed at some point that when the cases came back to them, they were like, wow, it's the same list of the same states. Now, I don't want to say that we were wrong about this, but logic compels me to acknowledge this. I think that was the case probably for the chief. Kavanaugh, I think, I see hints that he came around to it from another direction by saying, if I deny this, then I'm going to deny myself the logic I need for some conservative conclusion for some other case. So I'll concede this one, because really the writing's on the wall about this one, honestly. So we might as well concede what's obvious so that I can do my worst later on other things. But I have yet to read and analyze that. That's hanging out there. But you want to hear more about the former guy, don't you? Probably. There's a lot, and a lot of very interesting perspectives. So we'll go now to some of the other analysis of these things and share the thoughts of others on this. All right, what have I got here for you? Some of this stuff is not entirely clear what's hiding behind it. But one piece that comes from the New York Review of Books, The Ultimate Deal. What's going on here? I'll tell you what's going on here. I don't know. But it's paywalled. But Pocket helps us out with this one. Shh, don't tell anyone. The New York Review of Books on The Ultimate Deal, Fintan O'Toole. Are we reviewing a book? I can't even tell exactly what's going on here. But I guess so. I don't even know what the format. I don't read the New York Review of Books all that often, to be honest, but let's see. This I saw being shared on social media, and I can't recall now what the excerpt was that was of such interest, but it really looked like the whole piece was interesting analysis of what we had learned from the indictment. And it's illustrated with pictures of the documents stacked up in this one bathroom and the spilled documents in this other storage room. And it goes like this. And I think this was the piece that meant to speak to Trump's transactionalism and I think reinforce the point we've made here a number of times and that others have reinforced for us as well, of Trump's inability or unwillingness to separate his own personal possessions, personality, from things he has taken custody of for whatever reason, legally or illegally. And that's a continuing problem for him. Secrets, it begins, are a kind of currency. They can be hoarded, but if kept for too long, they lose their value. Like all currencies, they must, sooner or later, be used in a transaction, sold to the highest bidder, or bartered as a favor for which another favor will be returned. To see the full scale of Donald Trump's betrayal of his country, it is necessary to start with this reality. He kept intelligence documents because, at some point, those secrets could be used in a transaction. I'll pause here to say that you think you need to be aware of course, first, you're already aware, we already brought it up, and you probably knew instinctively that when people say, well, he didn't give the documents, he won't have proof that he showed the documents to anyone. Except now, of course, we do, because we have the Bedminster tape where he says, look at this document. Look, no, you shouldn't look because it's classified and I'm not allowed to show it to you. But look, there's that. But then, there was also this supposition. Well, who's he giving them to? The Russians? We don't know for sure. We haven't seen it. Iranians, Turkish, Saudis. We're not really sure. Just Chinese, just people at random, people he wanted money from, favors for. I don't know. But there hadn't been any proof yet. But like I said, he's the most transactional person in the world. Certainly the most transactional president we've ever had. The idea that he wasn't setting something up is ludicrous. But it doesn't matter because the statute anticipates that. But, yes, in your analysis of what's going on, one, you should know that the statute doesn't care. And two, everybody knows this about Donald Trump, that anything he was holding on to was because they could be used in a transaction. What he was stockpiling were the materials of treason. He may not have known how and when he would cash in this currency, but there can be little doubt that he was determined to retain the ability to do just that. Before the publication of the grand jury's indictment, it was possible to believe that Trump's retention of classified documents was simply, I'll add the word simply, reckless and stupid. The indictment reveals that recklessness and stupidity were the least of his sins. With Trump, it's always a mistake to equate anarchy with purposelessness or to think that the farce is not deadly serious. Trump's hoarding of official secrets is both breathtakingly careless and utterly calculated. At the heart of that calculation is a cold resolve to not give up the power that access to highly restricted information had given him. That's a good point. It should be read again and understood. Trump's hoarding of official secrets is both breathtakingly careless and utterly calculated. Yes. At the heart of that calculation is a cold resolve to not give up the power that access to highly restricted information had given him. Why is he interested in highly restricted information? Doesn't understand it, doesn't just like reading it. He knew he could use it for something, a transaction, and that transaction would give him power. He also knew that the power that was supposed to come with the presidency was being revoked from him. And he not only fought January 6th style to retain that power, literally, to actually stay in office, but he said, even if I end up losing this fight and they throw me out and I'm not the president, the power of the presidency to me is the ability to have this secret information because I can use it in a transaction. They're going to take my possession of this information that I can sell away from me if they make me not president. Well, they might succeed in making me not president, but they won't succeed in taking away my ability to sell this information because I am going to steal these documents. The power I care about is the power to transact business with these documents. That they won't take from me. I won't let them. They can throw me out of the White House. They can say I'm not president, but they can't take away the part of the presidency that I really was interested in, which was access to this information that I could sell. I'll simply take it with me. That's what you really need to realize about this. The most immediately striking parts of the indictment may, in this regard, be something of a distraction. The photographs that show boxes of papers at Mar-a-Lago, piled high on a ballroom stage, in a bathroom, and spilling out onto the floor of a storage room, convey an almost comic sense of chaos. By the way, spilling out on the floor of a storage room next to a photocopying machine. So if you just happen to walk in there, you don't even have to open the boxes to look for classified information. There's just something that laying on the floor that says top secret, and there's a photocopy machine right next to it. I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. But I should say this, even if it's not all as dumb as it would be very difficult to believe, but he's done I mean, he's crazy. So would he put a copying machine there so that spies would be able to use it? Not if you mean spies other than him. But does it mean that they were busy copying those things so that they could put another copy of them? I want these things copied and flown to Bedminster, because if they ever search Mar-a-Lago and I lose these things, I'm going to be pissed. I need the information. That's why I'm holding on. That's what I'm holding on to from the presidency. Not the trappings, this information. And if they search Mar-a-Lago and take it away from me, I'm going to be angry. So copy it and send it elsewhere. That's how this is going to work. I mean, what else is a copying machine doing in a storage room? I don't know. Should see if it's plugged in. Anyway, as we were saying, the photographs showing the boxes all over the place convey an almost comic sense of chaos. If comedy is generated by incongruity, what could be more incongruous than nuclear plans or details of potential vulnerabilities of the United States and its allies to military attack sitting beside a toilet? It all seems random and haphazard, an impression greatly magnified by the knowledge that Mar-a-Lago, in the 18 months after Trump took the documents from the White House, was, as the indictment states, the venue for more than 150 social events, including weddings, movie premieres, and fundraisers that together drew tens of thousands of guests. The New York Times has published photographs scraped from social media of people in party dresses or casual summer clothes around the Mar-a-Lago pool. We can see that behind them, the door that the door that leads to the storeroom, which was packed with, where are we? Sorry, Mark, you distracted me. You texted me, and I went to look at it. It's all right. It's no problem. We move on. The New York Times has published photographs scraped from social media of people in party dresses. They're out on the pool deck. You can see that behind them, the door that leads to the storeroom, which was packed with boxes of official papers, is wide open. You can go right into it off the pool deck, apparently. I did not know that. In those boxes, when the FBI opened them in August of 2022, were 11 documents marked top secret. And who knows, maybe there were 15 of them in those boxes before, but somebody went to the pool and walked in the wrong door. I thought this was the bathroom. Oh, it is the bathroom. And there's secret documents here. I'm going to take them. I don't know. We don't know. We don't know. Or at least we don't know if the government knows or not. Maybe it's on tape. Well, anyway, in those boxes were 11 documents marked top secret, 36 marked secret, and 28 marked confidential. It would have been the least thrilling spy thriller ever made. No James Bond high-tech gadgets or George Smiley ingenuity. Just turn up in a cocktail dress, slip through an open door, and help yourself to the U.S. military's contingency plans for invading Iran. Except those were with him at Bedminster, as it turns out. Or at least a copy was, thanks to the copy machine. Yet this ludicrous vulnerability to foreign spies is both remarkable and somewhat beside the point. The slapdash storage of classified papers is shocking, but also misleading. It defines the scandal as, in the words of Alan Feuer and Maggie Haberman of the New York Times, Mr. Trump's indifference toward the country's most sensitive secrets. But this is not a tale of indifference. Trump cared a great deal about the value of the documents. He cared enough, per the indictment, to suggest that his attorney lie to the FBI and the grand jury about what papers he did or did not have. Even Trump does not engage in a criminal conspiracy purely for its own sake. The retention of those boxes mattered to him because he understood the market value of what they contained. And I remind you again here, that is why the Espionage Act doesn't wait for the transaction to take place. It criminalizes the mere possession of this material. Because if they wait for you to do the harm that causes the foul, it's too late. They understand the nature of intelligence information. Having it when you're not supposed to, even by mistake, even unbeknownst to you, is punishable by law. But they will use the discretion of the prosecutors, the prosecutorial discretion is available to the DOJ to say, if we find this stuff on you and you say to us, and we believe you, I had no idea, and you give it back to us when we ask you for it, and if we search your house, we don't find more copies of it, etc., we are willing to say, okay, there are certain people who, under certain circumstances, we could believe might accidentally have this stuff. That's what's going on when Trump is complaining. And Biden, he took thousands of boxes. He didn't. I mean, he took thousands of boxes, but there was nothing in most of the boxes that was confidential or classified. But to the extent that there were things and there were some found, we know this. Mike Pence, everybody, as it turns out, inadvertently takes things that are classified at some level. The difference, of course, as everyone now knows, is that when they say you have it or they discover it themselves, they give it back. They don't ask their lawyers to hide it. They don't ask their lawyers to hide it. And then once the lawyers say we won't hide it, they don't ask their lawyers, could you take it out and destroy it? Isn't it better if we just destroy it and say we never had it? That doesn't happen. It does happen with Donald Trump because he knows a number of things. One, that he's caught dead to rights. Two, that it's really important to him to retain possession of these things. And he's not saying, by the way, let's destroy all records, all traces of these things, because if I can't have them, nobody can have them. That's a possible conclusion he might reach. But he also knows that there's a photocopier stored alongside it, and there's probably another copy at Bedminster or Trump Tower or who knows where. So destroy this copy. But, did he want to destroy all of them? I don't know. But like I said, the Espionage Act contemplates all this. One of the few times that I can recall looking at a statute like this when Trump was in trouble with it and saying they actually have got it covered here. Anyway, back to the article. It is important to bear in mind that chaos is Trump's natural element. It is the medium in which his narcissism thrives. When there is no plan, the only law is his own desire. He alone knows that at any given moment, or he alone knows at any given moment what he will do. And he may not even know, actually. In this light, the apparent disorderly stage of the boxes, storage of the boxes at Mar-a-Lago does not signify a lack of concern with what they contained. It's just the norm of Trump world. Derangement is his modus operandi. Yeah, and I guess there, in that sense, he really has fooled. And they had the opportunity to use different words to describe this, but he's fooled Fuhrer, whatever his name is, and Haberman here, insofar as he's gotten them to say it's Trump's indifference towards the country's most sensitive secrets. No, it's his indifference towards organization, perhaps, or his indifference towards, I don't know what, formality, but don't mistake that for indifference for the value of what's in the boxes. He just stores stuff haphazardly because that's what he does with everything. But they're all things that he values. The, what's his name? Tim Tebow helmet and the boxing gloves and the other various mementos and the newspaper clippings. I mean, everything that was in those boxes, all kinds of jumbled crap, all things that he valued for different reasons, but didn't separate in any way. That doesn't mean he's indifferent about them. He covets them deeply. He's just indifferent about organization and security. That's really what should be said. So, okay. The indictment makes clear that Trump knew very well that he was breaking the law. He was repeatedly warned by the National Archives and Records Administration and his own attorneys that if he did not hand over the missing records, he would be referred to the Department of Justice. He had, of course, made a very big point in his attacks on Hillary Clinton of the need for zero tolerance for any lack of rigor in the handling of classified documents. He fully understood that the laws applied to everyone, including the president. As he declared in September of 2016, before that year's election, quote, "We can't have someone in the Oval Office who doesn't understand the meaning of the word confidential or classified." Which, I mean, I would just put alongside his insistence in that one video when I think he was talking about Anthony Weiner. We can't have perverts in New York. We can't have perverts in office. No perverts. And I mean, you know, again, every accusation is a confession for this guy. As president, in July of 2018, he issued a statement saying that, quote, as head of the executive branch and commander-in-chief, and you know he didn't say this, it was just written for him, I have a unique constitutional responsibility to protect the nation's classified information, including by controlling access to it. Okay. More specifically, Trump knew that he was taking huge risks when he allegedly instructed his lawyers to lie to the FBI and the grand jury. That lawyer, quoted in the indictment, recalls that when Trump told him to take a folder of documents to his hotel room, he made a silent plucking motion, as if to say, if there's anything really bad in there, like, you know, pluck it out. Precisely because Trump knew that he was committing a crime, he preferred not to utter the incriminating words. There is nothing thoughtless or accidental in all of this. He clearly believed that the risks were worth taking. This does not suggest that he was holding these documents merely as souvenirs, which is what Haberman came to believe, right? He's just a pack rat. He loves souvenirs. He loves knickknacks. It's quite possible to believe that part of his motivation lay in his fantasy that he was still the real president. Retaining the intelligence briefings he received as POTUS would make him still, at some level of self-delusion, potent. The two known occasions cited in the indictment, when Trump produced some of the documents to outsiders while explicitly referring to them as secret and confidential, have this air of showing off, perhaps as much to himself as to those he was trying to impress. It is also quite reasonable to think of him experiencing a tingle of pure pleasure in imagining his own impunity, knowing that he was committing the ultimate transgression, and thrilling to the idea that he would get away with it, because he always had, in his life, all his life, gotten away with everything. But these elements of twisted psychology can coexist with a more rational impulse to keep hold of secrets that could be traded at some point for his personal gain. Trump sees himself above all as a deal maker. The nation's classified information is a potentially lucrative part of one or many deals. This intent would be treasonous. Trump may not have actually committed treason, but he was consciously putting himself in a position to be able to do so. For what is not secret is the identity of the foreign countries that would be most interested in acquiring the details of the military plans and vulnerabilities of the U.S. and its allies. The indictment states that the documents also included information that could identify U.S. agents and informants in some of those countries, and the continued viability of sensitive intelligence collection methods. This is worth underlining. Trump went to great lengths to retain for himself, as a private citizen, the power to reveal to any foreign power not just U.S. military secrets, but the workings of U.S. intelligence, and rather intelligence gathering in those countries. It is impossible to believe that he did this accidentally or without considering that he might at some time use that power in return for some financial or other benefits. I'll pause here to add just a little bit more context to it. He has just watched the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Saudi Arabia hand his son-in-law and daughter, Jared and Ivanka, $2 billion of investment, and it's not $2 billion cash to them, true. It's a $2 billion investment in his startup, what did he call it? Hedge fund, private equity fund. I can't remember exactly what he termed it. But where does he draw his salary? From that fund. Is that fund making any money? I don't know. Doesn't matter. The point is that they put $2 billion into a fund that he intends to use to generate income for himself. And how did he do it? Well, remember all the speculation we've read over the years about his various visits to Saudi Arabia, the initial visit, the first state visit that they made, and when Jesse Lee said, mark my words, something horrible will be found out to have come from this, something evil, something unbelievable, etc., etc. Well, then shortly afterwards, his good friend, Mr. Bonesaw, pulls his essentially coup in Saudi Arabia, taking the country one Saud from another and imprisoning everybody else. And that there was always this lingering suspicion that somehow Jared Kushner had passed to him intelligence, American intelligence, about who was opposing MBS internally. And they all were suddenly surprised and arrested and held in, admittedly, the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh, but not treated particularly well, it seems. And the suspicion was always that Jared had been the one that turned over the information to MBS. And then he exits the White House and gets $2 billion. Who would like to have $2 billion more than Donald Trump? And so, well, one of the entrees into making this happen under the table might have been the LIV Golf PGA power play, or certainly paying Trump to host LIV golf tournaments at his properties. But it's pretty obvious that he had learned, or at least observed, Jared Kushner cashing in mightily with the Saudis. Well, let's conclude here, which makes it all the more astonishing that most of the Republican Party is fine with this. Much of the history of the right in America is bound up with paranoia about the possible existence of traitors at high levels in government. Every accusation is a confession with this guy, and most Republicans too. But good point. Here is stark evidence of the existence of one at the very highest levels of government, and Republicans are rushing to defend him. We are way late here in getting out, but I got to finish this article up. The Elizabethan courtier, Sir John Harrington, famously asked, "Treason doth never prosper. What's the reason?" And answered, "For if it prosper, none dare call it treason." Always a fascinating quote. If the hoarding of state secrets as valuable currency cannot be called treason, the concept has gone the way of honor, truthfulness, and respect for law. It has ceased to exist for the Republican Party. And missing here, I think, from the conclusion, is a better explanation of Harrington's statement here, which explains Trump's, in part, Trump's insistence on running for re-election again now, right? Treason doth never prosper. What's the reason? For if it prosper, none dare call it treason. In other words, if it prosper in this case, Trump comes back into power, and anyone who calls out his treason is simply scooped up and charged with treason in return. And it's, or he pardons himself and it becomes something other than treason. It ain't not treason, but it's not getting prosecuted as treason because he pardons it and everybody else connected with it. It simply defines itself as not treason and defines the correct definition of what he's done as treason as itself treason. Wow. Look out.
Radio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Okay, well that leaves me with very little time to tell you what Justice Putnam has coming up on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. In fact, no time really, because we're already running into his time. All I can tell you is to make it up to him for our having run long. You should stay tuned and listen for yourself. He's got a fantastic menu, as always, rounding up news from around the country and around the world.